About Bunk'd, which is the spin-off of Jessie, where I watched a few episodes while not being interested in this show completely. There were 3 Christmas episodes, 2 of which centering around the Wasp kids at most, and this episode in season 4, well, the new cast of characters are taking over, well, it doesn't feel like a Jessie spin-off anymore, and it's mainly its own thing, and after watching Summer Winter Wonderland, regardless if it's an episode taking place in July, I have to admit, this episode sums up that viewers, regardless of if they had a point on abandoning the show because of the original cast gone, have been bashing on the show to the ground. Look, I know I've been way too kind towards shows before I watched every single episode before I actually come up with my own opinion of it. And even though that these characters are difficult to latch onto compared to the Wasp kids, for how they're executed in this episode, well, Christmas doesn't take place until December, this really feels like a better Christmas in July episode compared to the Ed episode, Fa La 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 Eds. And I'm being really honest with you, regardless if you prefer that episode over this. Due to the freezing weather in Camp Kikiwaka, Lou decides to celebrate Christmas in July with the campers. And compared to the previous Christmas episodes, though taking the celebration involving Christmas seriously, regardless if it's still summertime at camp. All the while, Destiny is having a difficult time enjoying Christmas because of what happened to her grandfather. And to be perfectly real with you, Destiny's character in this episode sums up onto why that Buck is trying to develop an identity of its own by taking away the Wasp kids in order to execute its own characters. Like, you can make the argument that it doesn't work out for you since that this is still a Jessie spinoff at the end of the day, but considering that this, along with Raven's Home, are the 2 spinoffs that are still continuing on much longer compared to the original shows, I'm just gonna say right now that this is the closest we're ever going to get involving a camp sitcom taking forever while also doing different things along the way. And believe me, the fact that Disney had the will to make a camp sitcom, which is a spin-off from Jessie, all the while that it's still continuing on with its 7th season in production, I'm really convinced that this episode, being 3 years old, really aged a lot more better compared to what people think about this show during its 4th season in 2019. Look, regardless if I don't remember all the characters' names, I can't say that they're really forgettable, because for what they did in this episode involving cutting down a tree along with Destiny's grandmother, all the while Lou giving Gwen the Christmas experience of all Christmas experiences, you will probably be in their situation if you're ever at a camp that celebrates Christmas, which, to be perfectly honest, it never happened in the real world. And the fact that this is a sitcom that isn't supposed to be taken seriously when it comes to Disney Channel standards, it should be no surprise at this point. Because after Dan Schneider left Nickelodeon, and over the next following years, Nickelodeon sitcoms have a change of quality if you have a different point of view on them, I'm starting to convince that the modern days of sitcoms, mainly in the 2020s, aren't as bad compared to the 2010 sitcoms. I mean, granted, there were good sitcoms in the 2010s, but whenever I think about Disney or Nickelodeon sitcoms, regardless if I didn't watch them completely, our harsher criticism towards those shows haven't aged completely, and regardless if it lacked qualities when it comes to cartoons, I can't say for a fact that this show alone is one of the worst sitcoms, because this episode alone is just basically what this show is trying to accomplish after the main characters left. And for me personally, Destiny's plot in this sums up everything onto why that this show has been overshadowed. When Destiny and her friend perform on stage, she's saying dashing through the snow, but her version by doing insults rather than being happy all the time. And the reason for that is that her grandfather passed away, and her grandfather was the reason why she had so many great Christmases over the past several years during her childhood. And considering that she is a child and not a complete teenager by the time of this episode's production, I'm pretty sure the personality traits overshadow the positivities when it comes to viewership. Like, regardless if you may say that Destiny isn't a very good character for what she does in episodes before and after, I really felt like that this episode alone shows that she has development. Because when it comes to the Wasp Kids that already had development in the Jessie show and when they appear in seasons 1 through 3, it's becoming an excuse to see more of these characters in the spin-off after the main show come to an end. And when it comes to seasons 4 and onwards, especially in season 6, I really felt like that this is the show that was originally going to air all the way back in 2015, but unfortunately they couldn't be able to have the viewership being engaged with these characters completely, so they have the Wasp characters be part of the first 3 seasons until they left in order to pursue different things. Which is why we end up with these characters. I mean, yes, I understand that you prefer the Wasp Kids over these characters, but they're not terrible. Let's get into Lulu. Lulu was one of the first original characters in the beginning of the show, and since that she is taking control of the camp as the series continues, I have to say that she actually carries the show, and I gave her a lot more credit than I thought after watching clips of it of season 4. For me personally, she has a lot of humorous jokes, and for me personally, she does have a heart that even after season 5, she still continue on with this show to the point that this show has more episodes compared to That's So Raven and Wizards of Waverly Place, and regardless if Raven's Home has 100 episodes, it doesn't change the fact that Bunk'd has more episodes as of now when it comes to Disney sitcoms. If you're one of those people who watch this show from the beginning and still watching to this day because of Lou, then it really shows that she's grown as a character. Because in the beginning of the show, she was a completely different character. Like, she was into the camp spirit, but at the same time, she was still a camper. She wasn't in total control of Camp Kikiwaka. And for how she was executed in the earlier episodes, her development in this really shows that she's just trying to carry the show on her back, which isn't really much of an accomplishment knowing full well that the viewership has a decline ever since the Wasp Kids left. But at the same time, I don't really blame Luke completely because she's actually humorous, and even though that the crossover between this and Raven's Home would have been a lot more better if it had the Wasp Kids, thinking about it now, if I ever watch more episodes, especially the later seasons, I would say that the crossover is still good, regardless if it could have been better with the Wasp Kids in it. And if I'm gonna be perfectly honest, if this show did came to an end after season 3, we end up getting a different show, and that different show would have still had a crossover with Raven's Home regardless. And believe me when I say this, anything can happen when it comes to crossovers involving Disney sitcoms if they're newer or older. Seriously, I've talked about the crossovers in the past involving Austin and Ally and Jessie earlier in 2021, and considering that those two shows were at its second season, anything can happen regardless involving Disney sitcoms, which isn't saying a lot considering that there are only 3 Disney sitcoms at the moment, including this and Raven's Home. And when it comes to the Christmas spirit in this, I'm sorry. No matter how much that Ed, Ed, and Eddie is supposed to be a better Christmas in July episode, I still felt like that this episode's execution is a lot more better. I mean, Yes, I'm fully aware that this has nothing to do with the Lost Kids, and this feels less as a Jesse spinoff after they left, but believe me when I say this, the execution in this episode just got me invested a lot more compared to Ed and Eddie's Christmas in July episode. Mainly the fact that the characters actually have depth, and regardless if they're not funny completely, that doesn't automatically mean that the characters are terrible. Considering that Lou's goal is to give Gwen the Christmas experience while the other characters are doing their own thing with their own Christmas experiences along the way, this episode really feels a lot more harmless. Especially that for an episode involving Bunk'd seasons 4 through 6, I can instantly say that this is one of the saving graces, regardless if I didn't watch any other episodes along the way. I mean, the only bits I've seen were the final minutes of the final episode of season 5, and the way it's executed there, it really feels like that they're trying to develop these characters on their own, regardless of what you think otherwise. The ending in particular, well, everyone comes together with Destiny's friends giving her a gift, well, they put in "Don't worry, sweet pea, I'm here," is honestly heartwarming to the point that this pretty much beats anything when it comes to negativity. Believe me when I say this, is that if you see this clip right now and you're really devastated that no one brought it up, well, guess what? I brought it up and it's one of the highlights of seasons 4 through 6. Even if I didn't watch the other 2 Christmas episodes, if you enjoy those 2 Christmas episodes, that's good. I can't judge you. But when it comes to a Buck episode centering around new characters and trying to do its own thing, then believe it or not, this episode isn't terrible. Like, you can rank it at number 3 for all I care, but for long-time viewers involving this show who actually enjoyed this episode much more than the other 2 from their perspective, if they feel that way, then it really sums up that Bunk'd is one of the reasons onto why Disney sitcoms are still going on even to this day, and one of the reasons that this show is getting renewed a lot of seasons than just 4. Okay, granted 3 times when it comes to the renewed of seasons 2, 3, and 4, but when I say 4, I meant a traditional Disney sitcom with 4 seasons. If I'm gonna be honest, when an episode includes baby foxes living in the tree that the boys were originally going to cut down, considers one of the best moments, even almost as close when it comes to Destiny's grandfather passing away, then you can instantly tell that they're really trying everything to make these characters likable, regardless if it's difficult to remember their names. If you ever, you can say that they did appear in seasons 3 for my lack of knowledge, but at the same time, I really felt like that they're really trying to make this a lot more better without the presence of the Lost Kids. Like, for a show involving camping that is still going on after 7 years is honestly an accomplishment, because even if it may require sacrifices, Raven's Home had sacrifices when it comes to Chelsea and her kids being absent in the 5th season of Raven's Home. I would go on and on about this episode, but for me personally, I felt like that this is a demonstration that Buck, being one of the longest Disney sitcoms, is trying to, at this point, pretty much showcases its identity at this point. Regardless if this episode aired 3 years ago, for anyone who didn't watch the episodes involving seasons 4, 5, and 6, then you should at least give them a shot, especially the 6th season, since that the characters are at a ranch. If I'm gonna be honest, going to a ranch rather than staying at Camp Kikiwaka, the original place forever, will probably be a lot more stale. Believe me, I'm pretty sure that anyone who's working on sitcoms at the moment are trying to take inspiration from that fact. If I'm ever going to binge watch this show, mainly seasons 4 through 5 and maybe the earlier seasons, I need to actually give an open perspective towards the show and mostly the viewers who felt like that this show just hasn't been the same since season 4, since the Wasp Kids left. And as much as I understand what people are coming from, I can't say for a fact that this show is terrible because of the new cast. If anything, I should really put my perspective on how these characters are executed, especially that some of them appeal in seasons 3. I'm giving this episode a 7.5 out of 10.